Join the team.
Hey, this is the McGuire Review, and today we are going to be taking a look at the brand new Founders of Gloomhaven. I am very excited about this review, and you may ask, well, how did you come about getting this? And the answer is, I stole it. Yeah, it's a great story, more or less. Okay, so let's get into an overview of the components that we have here, and you'll notice that we will have some video right over here that will be showing some of the close-ups of the components, so watch for that as we're going through some of the setup here. So where I would like to start is with the map itself. So we'll kind of start here and we'll work this way. Now, the map is very different than I think something that you would see from the Gloomhaven universe. Again, this game is part of the Gloomhaven universe. It's Founders of Gloomhaven. So this is like the beginning of what we see in our Gloomhaven campaign with all the different areas around that map that you're going to visit, as well as the city of Gloomhaven. This is the design and the build-up of the city of Gloomhaven by 8 different races that are included in this game. We look at the map here, you'll notice there's various different parts of the map, different colors, and there's actually 4 different areas. There's a red, there is a gray, there is a green, and there is kind of a beige area. And the beige area is going to be our coastal areas. You can see those are right along this large river that separates the map here. We've got kind of a bay area, so almost like a sea. And what's really awesome about this, and we'll get some pictures up close at the end, you'll also see on the video overview that the artwork is absolutely fantastic on this, just like it was in Gloomhaven. It's much smaller, obviously, on this map, as well as these various buildings and tiles that you can build out, but the artwork is awesome. And that's one of the things about this game that I really, really like, is the fact that the artwork is so cool. And I really like the really small, detailed artwork that you find in games, and this one does it to a perfect level. So, you know, in looking at this little sea in this bay, you can see there's like a little sea monster down here. There's some various boats that are in the bay area. There's nice rocks that are along the sea coast here. So I absolutely love that. You've got your red areas, which is considered kind of your entrance areas to the map. You've got your green areas that are more of your forest type areas for building, housing. When we'll get to it here in a minute, we'll talk about that each race has the ability to build up to 3 houses, and those houses can be built in areas that are green. Those are your forest areas. And then you have this gray area here, which is more of kind of a central zone to start off where various resources will be located. And I have that here. I have a 3-player game set up here, and each player, the purple, yellow, and teal player here, and each one of them is a different race, and these are all the races that you're going to find within the Gloomhaven game that's currently out. I have one in each one of these areas here, and you can start in the same area, but you don't want to start adjacent to one another. So I do have kind of these set up here in 3 different areas of the map, and then after you set up the resource, or any type of tile that you would build, you would then place one of your claim tokens on it, which is these circular tokens right here. And that's just a way to indicate that that's something that you built and you own, and other people can buy access to that over the course of the game, and they'll place their tokens there as well, but they'll always place their token under your token. That way, it's very clear to see whatever color is on the very top, that's the person that really owns or started that area. But I like that ability to be able to buy access to resources over the course of the game, and even be able to access various buildings that are built out over the course of the game. And that's one thing that's really cool, is there's actually buildings outside of just resources that you will build based on these prosperity building cards that are right up top here. And we'll get to that because that's a really cool aspect of this game. So the last thing that you're going to see in this map is this track that goes all the way across the outside. And that's really a track to just track your victory points over the course of the game. Obviously, when the game is over, it is the person that has the most victory points, and there's various ways those add up. But it's the person that has the most victory points is who's going to win the game. And you'll track that with these little, it's almost kind of a little miner's pickaxe is what it kind of looks like for each one of the colors. And you'll move that along the board as you're scoring round to round wherever you may fall. So that's really what this outside track is for. So let's go ahead and move now to our components. And what I'll do is I'll start with a player mat. So there are 8 of these player mats that are included in the game, and each one of them is a different race. So what I like about that is, in a lot of Euros, you'll find this where every single person has kind of the same sort of generic start, right? And then you'll be able to, make worker placement, cube placement, resource management throughout the course of the game that will define the winner at the end of the game. One thing that I love about this Euro game, and it is a Euro-style game, but I can see that this is going to be by far one of my favorite, and probably is at this point, and will be for many others as you start to play, because it has all these other aspects built into it that you generally wouldn't find in a pure Euro-style game. Things like this specific race type. Things like when you play actions, others can play those exact same actions. There's voting mechanics. There are advisor mechanics that you can buy and implement in the game. So there's just so many different things that you're able to do in the game, but it still feels to have this, I don't want to say basic flow, but it still feels easy. Like once you learn the rules of the game and what you can do on your turn, it does flow very, very quickly. And we'll talk more about how these action cards work, because that's another mechanic that I absolutely love that's built into this game. It gets you out of that analysis paralysis that you get into when you generally play Euros. We'll talk about that here in a second. So back to our cards, we've got 8 different races. I do have 3 of them out here in front of me. These are all races from the Gloomhaven universe. And on the card, they're very highly visual, so I'll grab one here. This is our Savas card here, and you can see that there's quite a bit on that actual card for you. And really those things are going to be helping to explain the various combinations that are in the game. So you will start with basic materials. Materials like gems and livestock and wood. There's a few others here. People, stone. So there's various different types of resources that you'll put on the board and you'll start with. You will then start to combine these resources in ways that will give you greater types of resource. So, for instance, you can take gems and turn it into jewelry. You can take livestock and add it with wood and then get like armory type things. So it's really cool how you start to combine these resources to get these more, upgraded, you can say, and that is an action in the game, resources, and then you can turn that into actual building types that benefit you, and those buildings are where you're going to start to deliver, goods to. And that's an interesting concept as the game plays out, that you start with very basic resources, and it's just kind of like real life, right? You start with very basic resources, some livestock, some stone, some crop, and then you're going to be putting that together and turning it into things like knowledge and armory and fighting skills. There's some various other things here like government and jewelry and technology. Buildings that you can build, the prosperity buildings as they're called, are very cool as well. Ghost Forest, the Happy Alchemist, the Finer Things, the Burnt Onion, that's one of my favorites, the Sleeping Lion, Golems and Gizmos, that's another favorite of mine. And they'll have little spots on them where you'll actually deliver what these little cubes are here to those areas. So over time, you will deliver goods, you'll kind of max out those buildings, and that's how the game really triggers and ends, is when these buildings are maxed out. We'll talk about that in a minute here. So you can see on the card that it will actually indicate every race has a special racial action that they can take, and it is unique to that race. That's another component that I really like. It gives you a lot of replayability in the game, that you can go through and you can play all 8 races, and they are different due to that racial ability. Right over here you will see, and it will indicate to you that a race will start out with a certain type of resource, and when you begin the game you will get that resource based on your selection of this race. It will also indicate on the card here with lines that there are certain resources that are not available to this race, which means that initially you can't claim that resource. Now you can use that resource over the course of the game, but you can't claim it to start the game. So when you start the game, you're actually going to start with 2 resources. One is just going to be given to you naturally based on your race, and the other one is going to be more of a draft type mechanic. I say draft because you kind of go around the table and you select that resource, and it is by player order. There's another nice mechanic when you start off. And then there's some various areas around the map that you can set, various tokens, and you can do that however you wish. I've chose to set it up this way. You don't have to specifically, and I think as more rules are released in the final rulebook, it's going to indicate exactly what each one of these little spots is for. But again, it gives you the ability to kind of customize that and put that on the map as you see fit. So I've done that here. So what I'll do now is kind of start to explain the various components that we do have on the board here. So every player is going to be able to build up to 3 houses, and there's a little token here for houses, and there's a little meeple that once you build a house, and houses have to be built in these green areas, and green areas only, you can only have 1 house in each green area. So one player cannot put 2 in one area. You do have to kind of spread those out. Once you do that, you do release your little meeple. So there is a component of the game that gets into worker placement. And on our prosperity building cards here, as well as on our racial card here, there are spots to set a meeple that will, on your turn, allow you to activate that various function. So there is a little bit of a worker placement mechanic in this game, and your worker will stay there until you do something called call to vote, which resets. We'll get to that here in a second. But there is a worker placement aspect of the game. Up here you will find a little area to track what they call income. So as you play the game, you can track income. That basically gives you a 1 income every time you build a new resource or a new building that you don't own yet. You will be able to get an income, and that will pay off once someone activates what we call to vote. You'll get money in this game. Based on that, you will also have little voting cards, and there are 3 of them. And there's 1 for each symbol on our prosperity building track: a circle, a square, and a triangle. And those will correspond to the triangle, circle, and square right here on our prosperity building track. And when someone does a call to vote, that's when you're going to use these. You will also start the game with 3 bridges, and this is a really cool mechanic. You'll notice on the map that there is an area here for a river, and there's also areas on the map that have these stone walls around them. Now, if you want to get from this area to this area, or from this area to this area due to trade or trying to deliver something or trying to connect to a certain type of resource that you need, you're going to have to deploy a bridge. And you're going to do that by setting that on the map like so. And that's going to be able to allow you as a player to move from area to area. Now, I will say that another mechanic I really like is as you build these bridges, they are specific, and they do have colors. This is purple here, and this one's purple. This one here is yellow and teal. You can see the colors right on the items there. That is your bridge as a player. And what that means is no other player can utilize that bridge. They have to build their own bridge to get to a different area. And bridges can be adjacent to one another. That's pretty much the only type of object that can be adjacent directly next to another object. So that's a very interesting mechanic as well, that you kind of have to strategically figure out, well, when do I want to build a bridge? When's the best time to do that? Because you do have to pay for that. Use that kind of we'll call an action. You do have to pay for that, and these do cost $4, we'll say, dollars. As the rulebook gets built out, I believe it's the money that's within Gloomhaven. So 4 of that monetary value, we'll say dollars though for now. And they do get placed on the board, and then only that player can use that bridge. So I like that mechanic. It adds some fun to it. Like, oh man, I wish I could use this bridge, but it belongs to another player. So I'm going to have to build my own bridge to get from point A to point B. You will start out as well with your resources. We talked a little bit about that. Each person will get 3 tokens of a certain type of resource. Now, our Vermilion here does start off with the wood resource, and we have placed that right here, and then put the purple claim token on it to indicate that's my resource. Because those aren't color-coded, so the only way to know whose resources is what is by putting that claim token there on it. So we do have that, and that was the natural resource that this particular race would start with. I also have claimed the metal here resource for this race, and that happened in the very beginning of the game. So when you start the game, after you get everything that you would have, by player order, you will go around and you will select a resource, and then you will take this little resource card. You have the metal here as well as the wood card, and that just simply gives me a little guide on how to start using those resources and putting them together to then upgrade to greater resources and then buildings in time. And then on the back is a really nice building guide. It's very small, but it does show you what you can do over the course of the game with all the different types of building units, with all the different types of building materials. So I like that these little reference cards are included. Obviously, you probably won't need those after you've played the game a few times, because you'll just start to learn how they all add up. And the actual player card itself does have a couple little items here to show you various different build combinations as well. So one mechanic that I do like in build out is when you're selecting that second resource, and again, it's just you go by player turn, by player order. If you get to, let's say, the third or fourth player, because this is a 2 to 4 player game, that fourth player may be left with a resource that isn't something that they can actually start with. So again, the Vermling here can start with wood by racial quality, and then they cannot start with livestock or gems. Let's say livestock and gem are the ones that are left, and I was the Vermling, let's say I was fourth player. Because I can't start the game with those particular resources, I can use them over the course of the game, but I can't start the game with them. I then would pick another player and say, well, that is something that I can start with, and let's say it was stone. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take your stone, and I'm going to take that card, and then that player would be forced to choose from whatever was left. So that's an interesting mechanic as well, that there is kind of this, really a way to balance it to make sure that even if you go third or fourth, you still have the ability to get something that works for you. And if it's not available, you can take it from another player. So that's interesting as well. I wasn't sure about that rule initially, but as it played out, it actually worked really well and balanced that initial allocation of resources from the very beginning. You do have money that you start the game with. You will start the game with 7 of the money here. You will also have quite a few. There's actually 16 of them. These are your little delivery tokens that you will use as you make delivery of goods to the buildings that are available. And again, you can't really start to make those deliveries until those buildings are out there. And then the last thing you're going to see is your actual cards that you're going to start the game with. Now, you will start with each one of the basic actions, which is construct, trade, upgrade, and recruit. And you can play those on your turn. Everyone's going to have those exact same actions and cards. The only cards that would be custom that you would gain into your hand over the course of gameplay, which you would keep for the rest of the game, will be your advisor cards here that you can purchase whenever you play the recruit action. And it's interesting, each card has a top and a bottom, much like Gloomhaven, and it will show you what that main action is that you can take when you play this card. And then the bottom here is going to be a follow action. And that really gets into the meat and potatoes, I would say, of the actual gameplay and what I think makes this game so rich. So now let's go ahead and get into the dissection of what a turn would look like. So when it's your turn, you're going to have your cards in your hand. Let's say that it was, the first round, you're only going to have your 4 actions in your hand: that construct, trade, upgrade, and recruit. Now there's a couple different things that you can do when it's your turn. Specifically 2 things. Now within those 2 categories, there is a few different items that you can actually execute on. But let's talk about at a high level what happens when it's your turn. So let's say it was my turn and I decided to play the construct action. Now, if I want to play construct and it's my turn, I will lay down in front of everybody that I am playing construct. Okay? And that's the only card that I'll need right now. Now, the thing is, at the very top where it says main, it will list out right for you, build a personal building at -1 cost. So let's say that I want to, early on, build one of my houses or build one of my bridges. I can do that. Now, I'm going to want to build one of my houses early on. Taking my turn with my Vermling race here, I'm going to grab one of my houses. And I am going to build that only in a green area as I'm allowed. Well, I already have a resource here. It doesn't really matter where I build this, but I just kind of want to keep it close. So I'm going to build my house right here. And when I do that, it unlocks this meeple, which means I now will be able to start to use that meeple on further turns. I will be able to activate an ability of one of these prosperity buildings, or I will be able to activate my racial ability by placing my meeple there. But my meeple is now unlocked, which is an awesome thing for me. Also have to pay the cost of building that personal building. Well, it costs me 4, it tells me. Well, I have 7 gold, so I'll go ahead and I will pay 3. So I'll grab my 5 token here, I'll pay 3 to the bank, and I'll get 2 back. So I've now just paid for that building because I played this card, and I can take advantage of the main action because it's my turn. Now, this is where it gets really fun, because now everybody else around the table will now do a follow-on action. So let's break that down. What that means in a Euro-style game like this is that I don't activate and take a full turn, and then now the next person activates and takes a full turn. Now the next person activates and takes a full turn. Now the next takes a full turn. Okay? What that means is on every single person's turn, everybody is playing. So when you get to your turn, you do get to kind of take a turn and getting the most benefit because it is your turn, but everybody else also gets to take a turn on your turn. What that mechanic does is it eliminates the analysis paralysis mentality that you generally get in Euro-style games like this, where you got the guy that sits and tries to point calculate what every single move would do and how that would affect every single other player, and then you got everybody else saying, okay, 2-minute time limit, okay, dude, it's my turn, let's move it along here. That doesn't happen in this game that I've found because everybody is taking a turn on everybody's turn. So you're always doing something every time someone takes an action. So what would happen now that I've taken my main action is my friend to my left would now take a follow action. Now they have 2 choices. They can either do the follow action that's on this card, which allows them to build a personal building. So it's always going to be something that's very similar to the main action, but you'll notice they don't get the benefit of it being 1 monetary value less than what it should be. So because it was my turn, I got to build a personal building for 1 less, so it was 3 instead of 4. Everyone else, if they want to take that follow-on action, can build a personal building, but only for the full cost of what it would be. So my friend here to the left could say, you know what, I'm going to build a personal building as well, and I'm going to build a house too, because I want to unlock a meeple. But that would cost them 4, not 3. The other option is they can play what we call a standard follow action. And what that does is it gives you quite a bit of options. So you may really want this follow action. And that's another thing you need to think of as a player when it's your turn. Whenever you play a card, is that basic follow action going to highly benefit everybody else? It's something to think about when you play the card. But outside of that, if you don't want to take that as the next player and around the table, you can take the standard follow action. That gives you a lot of option, actually. You can gain immediately a gold here, so you can get a money immediately, just 1. You can gain what we call a fleeting influence. Those will be our gems right up front here. And there's 2 different types of influence. There's fleeting as well as lasting. Lasting is worth a little bit more, and those come into play when you do the vote. So we'll talk about that next. But you can gain 1 of those influence, a fleeting. You can build 1 road, and that's our stack of tiles right here. So these little road tiles become very important in the game because, I mentioned you can't really build things adjacent to one another, and the reason to that is you have to build these roads that connect your resources. So, for instance, and this is really cool, you may have a basic natural resource right here. You may have another basic natural resource right here, and you may want to do an upgrade over here. Well, the only way that you can do that upgrade is you need to connect multiple basic resources, and the way that you do that is with these roads. Now you cannot chain those together through buildings, so they have to be chained together through a road. So it almost is like a hub and spoke mentality. The hub is going to be your upgrades and your buildings, and your spokes are going to be your various resources, which you will chain together with these roads. So over the course of gameplay, you'll find these roads chained together, and diagonal works just fine. So you'll start to lay roads, and you'll lay those out in the board, and you'll start to get other resources. And let's say we've got a knowledge resource out here, and you'll continue to build these roads together like this. And then all of a sudden you'll say, well, what takes gem and knowledge? Well, that may be one of our upgraded resources here, and you'll grab that and you'll place it on the board. And now you'll be able to do that because you have roads that connect the various resources that allow you to then get your upgrade. And then you'll get points for that. So that's how our track here works that we talked about. As you connect resources and you do various things, you'll get points on the board that will allow you to have a better chance of winning once you get to the end of the game. So that's how that works. You can also execute your racial ability as a standard follow action. So that's when, if you have a meeple unlocked, you can put it on your board here. And for my Vermling here, I can build a personal building connected to a wood resource tile for 2. So personal buildings cost 4, so that just kind of takes it down half and says, hey, if I got something that's connected to a wood resource, and wood is here, I want to get personal buildings connected to roads, and then start to watch where is that wood resource, because that's going to be very important for me and that race over the course of this game. I also can execute a prosperity building action. So that's the other spot on the board where you can do meeple. So the meeple basically goes on your little prosperity buildings, or it goes on your racial action. And that's the only places that the workers can be placed throughout the course of the game. They don't go actually on the map. It's more of the action that you want to take. I could place this right here. And by doing that, looking at this card, and it's under the triangle there, this is the salt barrel, and it tells me that I could import a basic resource you own to a connected coastal, okay, these squares down here, or a central space. The gray is our central for 1 monetary value. So that's pretty good. That basically tells me that I can import a basic resource. So that would be once I get our buildings out and I can actually import and deliver a resource to one of those buildings. So that's what this card will allow me to do. And it's interesting, you'll find here that there is some text on the card right above the meeple that tells you what you can do. There's also an actual building, the salt barrel, that's on this card. And you may say, well, does that say that I can build that salt building right then? And the answer to that is no. That's what comes into play when we do the second action that is available to you when it's on your turn. When it's your turn, you can lay the card face up, take the main action, everybody else has a follow-on action, okay? We've been over all that now. Or, when it's your turn, you can lay the card face down. What that allows you to do as a player is just simply take 1 standard follow action. But it is an important concept to that, because if you do that, it does not allow every other player to take a follow-on action. So this is one of those things where you're like, you know what? It may be getting close to the end of the game, and you might have some good cards in your hand to take, but you don't want everybody else to get a nice standard follow-on action, because it might highly benefit them. You want to keep things right where they're at. So you're just going to do this and say, you know what, I'm just going to take a money, or I'm just going to use a meeple to lock down an ability that's on one of these cards, or I'm going to execute one of my racial abilities. Or I just need to build a road. Maybe you just need that final road to make a connection amongst the resources that you have down. So that's a very important part on your turn, is you do have the ability to do that versus playing it face up, and that will stop everybody else from going around the table and allowing them to take a standard follow-on action. So very important. Now, the second thing that you can do when it's your turn, so the first being either play the card face up or play the card face down. The second is you can do a call to vote. And the call to vote is a whole nother mechanic of this game that I absolutely love. And it adds a whole nother layer of fun onto a basic standard Euro type platform. So what that means is, one, you have to at least have played 2 cards face up in front of you. So as you play these cards, you are going to want to put them in front of you and leave them in front of you. They're out of your hand now. You can get them back per the call to vote. We'll talk about that. They are out of your hand for now, so you're going to have them played in front of you. If you have at least 2 of these played in front of you, you then can call upon the call to vote. So let's say over the course of the gameplay here, my Vermling race has played both of these. Let's say they've played the Construct, and they've played the Trade action. Now it's my turn again as an active player, and I have left, let's just say, the Upgrade and the Recruit. Well, I don't want to play either one of those right now, and let's say that I also have got a Meeple that I've activated, and I've got these cards that are out there. And this is really the mechanic to refresh all that back to you. So you may say, well, every single turn, can I just keep placing these meeples wherever I want? And the answer to that is no. Once you place a meeple, the meeple is, you take the action and the meeple is locked there until you do the call to vote action. So you can think of the call to vote action as the point in the game when you need to kind of refresh everything and get it back. But you have to at least have 2 face-up cards that you've played. So there is some timing, and that's kind of the time clock between each one of those, so you can't just refresh every single active round. So now these are both out there, and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to play these cards, I'm going to do a call to vote, and I would announce I'm doing a call to vote. At that point, I would refresh, I would collect these cards back, they would go back in my stack, I'd be able to unlock my meeple and get it back ready to be used again. If the meeple was out here, I'd be able to pull that back and get it ready to use again. Now the beauty to collecting everything back is as I'm kind of pulling these cards back in, I'm going to want to see how many cards do I have left in my hand before I pull everything back. And this is also going to be timing around when you want to actually do this, because you may want to continue to buy some of these advisor cards and have them in your hand before you do a call to vote, because every time you do a call to vote, before you pull everything back, you're going to take every card in your hand, and you're not going to get the ability on it, but you're going to get a benefit for having cards in your hand. And that benefit is going to be for every single card, you can either get 1 money, you can build 1 road, or you can get 1 fleeting influence. And this influence is going to be important when we get to the actual ability of the call to vote. So that's what you can do. You get a benefit for your hand. You collect everything back up and put it up. Now, every other player around the table, starting from the player to your left and working around, will then get sort of their benefit, which is calculated in something we called income. So we talked earlier about as you build resources and buildings that you have not owned before, so kind of the first time you do it, you get an income. So as you do that over the course of the game, you would look at this track and you would say, oh, well, I have 3 income, okay? Because I've built a couple resources in a building that I didn't have before. It doesn't count for duplicates, so you have 2 of something, you only get 1, right? It's only for the first one that you build that you did not have before. You then would take that income and you would gain that income at that point in time. So it's a way to build up the monetary value amongst each one of the players. Now, the player that activated the call to vote will not get that income. They will get it once someone else does a call to vote. Your benefit as a player would be the fact that you got either money or influence or road based on the cards that were left in your hand. So there's the balance there, to be able to balance that between the player that calls for the vote and every other player around the table. So again, very, very good use of balanced mechanics from a point perspective as you go through the overall game. You then will do the actual vote. And that's when these little cards come into play. The little square and the circle and the blue square. You're going to take one of these cards, and again, these cards correspond to the little symbol that's on our board up here for each one of the buildings that's out here right now. And you're going to look at each one of those buildings and you're going to see what the actual building does. So now it's not about where the meeple would go and the little action that you could take. Now it's about the actual building that's on this card. So you can see right up top here, there's an actual building that's on that card. Right below it is the action that you would take if you wanted to put your meeple on there. But let's say that you wanted this building. You want the burnt onion, because the various types of things that you can deliver here resource-wise, maybe you're working on that and you think, you know what, I think I've got a good chance of being able to deliver goods to this building. Because as you deliver goods over time, once the building comes out, we'll show that here in a second, that's what's going to trigger some of the endgame mechanics. So let's say that's the building that you want as a player. Well, you're going to select, and you're going to do this kind of under the table, you're going to select that blue square. So you're going to select that, and you're going to kind of put these chips down so nobody can see, right? It's a secret. You're going to put that in one hand. Then you're going to take all of the lasting or fleeting influence that you may have acquired over the course of the game so far. This is where this becomes very important. So you're going to take all of that in your hand as well, and you're going to sort of max out your vote with this. And each one of the whites is worth 1, each one of the reds is worth 2 for this particular demo. Again, all of these materials are not final quality. Obviously, this is a prototype, as we've stated. So, not sure exactly what this is going to be or look like color-wise when the production version comes out, but this is what it is today. So you're going to take those, and then you're going to offset your vote. So your vote's kind of worth 1 for that. And you're going to offset it with these gems. So you may say, you know what, I really want that building. So I'm going to give it one of these reds, which means that's worth 2 more. And I'm going to give it a couple whites. So now this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's kind of my total now in my hand. And I'm going to hold that down. And per the rules, it states you would put the influence in one fist and your vote in the other. You can do it that way, or you can just put it all in one fist. It's really up to you. I think it's kind of more fun to actually put it in 2 different fists, because then it's sort of everybody reveals one, and then you can kind of reveal the other one. So, I kind of retract on that. I would go per how the rules shows, because it is kind of fun to reveal one and then reveal the other to see what it really is going to be. So everybody would hold those, they'd put them up, and they would say, okay, what building are we going to build? All right, well, looks like there's 2 squares, there's 1 triangle, and 1 circle. So you know what? We're building the square. But then everybody says, now we're going to release influence. And they're going to release the influence. And let's say in that situation, influence actually tipped the scales, and the circle ends up winning because enough people added influence to influence the yellow circle to win. So let's say that's how that happened. I will collect my voting cards back here. We then would build the West Gatehouse. That's this card here. And that's how the buildings get put onto the map. You will want to build up these upgraded resources with the course of game. If you don't have those upgraded resources, you can't fulfill all the different types of deliveries on the buildings that get built over the course of time. Like, some of them have basic resources like wood and crop and cattle, but then there's also brick on here, and there's also things like jewelry and government and combat. So you can't have those until you have the upgraded resources. So there is kind of a stacking effect in the game that you do have to build it up over the course of gameplay. So now after the vote, we see the West Gatehouse is the one that's going to be built. So we're going to look here and we're going to find the West Gatehouse, and it is right here. Here is the West Gatehouse, and we can see that it allows us to deliver 4 machinery, 4 brick, and 7 of what I like to call kind of like a military power. So that will be right here, and then we will find on the map where that goes, which the West Gatehouse does go right here on the map. This is actually one of them that has to go in a certain spot. So most of these buildings you can place on the map, and there's some rules that go to that. We're not going to get into all that right now, but there is some placement rule that where these buildings can be placed on the map. But there are certain buildings that can only be placed in certain spots. So there is a North Gatehouse, which gets placed here, a West, which gets placed here. There is a Ghost Forest, which gets placed here. And you'll notice there is one purple area right here that looks kind of like a big pit. nothing can be built there. So it'd be fun to see what that turns into. So that's how this particular building would get placed on the map. It does go right there in that spot. You'll find that in the rules. And then this will now be used. We then will populate a new building that will then go in that yellow's circle spot. So we'll draw the next one, and now it's the Soldiers' Garrison. So the Soldiers' Garrison can now be a potential building that we can build, and we'll replace it right there. So I love the fact that over the course of gameplay, and depending on how long the game goes, you may not always play every single type of building, and that's a component of replayability that I love as well. You may play a game that only certain types of buildings come out on the map. Others do not. The same with our advisor deck here. As we purchase advisors, and that's through the recruit basic action, you're going to take those. You do have to pay a cost. There is a cost over each one of these. The first two spots here are 1, then it's 2 and 2. And they do offer various points as well. Near the beginning of the game, they're not going to be worth a lot. They will go to 1, and then they will go to 3. So as you play the game, and those are put in order, once you get to the bottom of the deck, now your advisors are going to be worth a higher point value to you for the end of the game. So you will be getting some points based on which one of these advisors you pick up as well. So that's kind of the lure over the course of the game to actually use that recruit action and pick up these advisors. And again, each one of the advisor cards are much like your standard cards that you have. They do give you an ability of something that you can do if you want to play that card. So this one says it's a construct, and it says build a personal building at -2 the cost. So there is a lot of benefit in picking these up over the course of the game. And when you do, how this track works is let's say that these two right here had been picked up, and now someone has done the call to vote where that would execute a refresh. You're going to actually slide all of these down, however many there are, and then you're going to repopulate by doing this right here. So what you're going to find is it's kind of a track. And the beauty to that is you'll notice these cards would have been near the front originally, maybe for 1, but as cards are bought and chose, those cards are going to continue to move down. So the longer an advisor card is on the track, essentially the more it will cost you generally, because it's going to continue to slide down that track. So that's a cool mechanic as well. Now to wrap us, how do you win the game? Well, over the course of gameplay, obviously these buildings that we have down here are prosperity buildings, are going to be placed out on the map in various locations. And I'm just going to go ahead and put these out here. Now they do have a color around them, and that color indicates that it does have to be touching at least 1 square of the map. So let's do this right. I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to put a green one, let's just say right here. We'll just go ahead and stop there for our example. Now you'll notice that each one of the buildings obviously have these little spots on them that indicate the point that you will get, as well as when you make a delivery, it's a different type of delivery. So this one has population, gemstone, and knowledge, and this is the university building. So for this one here, once you're able to get a connection to this university, and you can do a delivery of goods, and there's actions here that will allow you to deliver goods, import goods, you would then set one of your delivery tokens right on top of that building, right in the spot of the type of delivery that you're making, whether it's gemstone, population, whatever it is on it. Now once it's there, it's there. There's only 3 more chances for someone to deliver goods to those areas. Once all the goods within an area, let's say this university was right here, once all the goods of the area, and I'm going to go ahead and fill this one up and say, well, yellow got 2, and purple got 1, and our teal player here got 1. This is now done. It's locked. The building is now fully at capacity, and it can't take any more. Once there are 6 buildings on the board that are fully locked, that will then trigger Endgame, which in this situation means game is over. And then the active player that's taking their turn, when that final good is locked into the 6th building, they will finish their turn, and then all points will be scored for all of the players. the person with the highest point value will be the winner of Founders of Gloomhaven. So that's how the game works. I hope I've done it justice with the overview and all the different mechanics that are in this game. I felt for this review it would be better to really go through and explain how the mechanics of the game work together versus just playing out a few rounds, because this game is very different than anything that I've ever seen before. It is at heart a Euro, but there's so many different mechanics that are placed on top of that basic system that make this game so much more. I mean, when I play this game, I feel like I'm playing a Euro. I feel like I'm playing an adventure game. I'm excited about what the next person's going to do on their turn, because I'm going to get to do a follow-on action if they don't put that card face down, which is going to allow me to do something even different than maybe I wanted to do when it gets around to my active player turn. Will I be able to get to add a road? Maybe I can upgrade and get some more money. Maybe I can fire off a racial action and be able to do something that I would have had to wait until it came all the way back around to me. I absolutely love that mechanic. It adds this level of gameplay that's so much more rich as you're playing the game than anything I've ever seen in any Euro to date. If you are a Gloomhaven fan, you have, and I have Gloomhaven right over here, sits on a table live at all times. If you are a Gloomhaven fan and you play that game, even if you're not a big Euro fan, you're going to love this game. And the reason is because it offers so much more than what a basic Euro offers. And it has all of the same type of artwork. It has the same type of races. It has the same type of feel. And just the fact that you can step back into the lore of the Gloomhaven universe as you're playing this game. I mean, you're literally founding the city of Gloomhaven that you're experiencing in the campaign of Gloomhaven. And will we see some integration of these games into the Gloomhaven universe into the future? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it's almost like we're already starting to see that. So hands down, this one gets another 10 out of 10 within its genre, just like Gloomhaven got in the more crawler adventure style genre. 10 out of 10. I love this game. It is the best Euro I've played to date. Let's do it. Woo! So hit that like, click the subscribe below to join the team, ring the bell. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.
I'm afraid